Hello and welcome to another video in my series of valve testing, or tube testing, as the Americans would say. And I've got my Maxi Matcher 2 here. So I've got 3 valve testers in total. I've got a basic emissions tester, I've got an Avail Mark 1 or 2, a 1952 full valve tester from the heyday of the manufacturer of valves. And I've got this much more modern one, a Maxi Matcher 2, and I bought it directly from America, from the company who made it, and it's a great thing, especially for quick valve matching. So I'm going to demonstrate some valve testing of a couple of match sets here that I bought from Watford Valves, and Derek from Watford Valves kindly sent me some valves which are going to go into my Mesa Boogie with a red matching. Now red, the color coding, red, is Mesa's way of color coding biased valves. Now, they've got a system whereby they don't have an adjustable bias. It is biased, everything has to be biased, but it goes by color codes. So you can just buy a set of Mesa red, yellow, green, purple, or whatever the colors are, pop them in, and you don't have to rely on a technician biasing them up. Whereas most normal amplifiers, I've got a potentiometer, and you monitor the idle current and set it to approximately, in the range of 30 to 40 milliamps. But the red ones are quite cold, as it were. So there's not a lot of idle current flowing, so the bias voltage is quite negative. Nearer the cathode to impede the flow of electrons with no signal present at the grid. So here we are with some valves. So courtesy of Watford Valves, I have some Tung Sol and 2 sets of Tung Sol. Now the reason I'm using Tung Sol is because my Two Rock Classic Reverb recently started acting up. So immediately taking off standby, I would get funny crackling noises. And I replaced the set in there, which was a set of Tube Amp Doctor 6L6W GC STRs, small bottle valve, looks like this. This is one of the ones that came out. It's the Redbase 6L6WGC, and you can see where it's, aged around the insulation base. So these came out of my Two Rock, and I popped in a brand new set of Tube Amp Doctor 6L6WGCs, Redbase, just like this, and it did exactly the same thing. And I puzzled over it for ages. I was at it for days after work, replacing preamp valves, just checking everything out. I even took the chassis out of the head shell just to make sure there wasn't something burned up inside, but there wasn't. In fact, the build was absolutely immaculate. Two Rock really know how to make a proper amplifier. So I put in a set of Tung Sols and biased to up as per Two Rock's instructions. Dead silent, no problem at all. At startup, it's fine. So I think Tube Amp Doctor are having problems. Now this set of valves that I got dated from 2023, and perhaps stupidly, before I realised it was the valves, I ordered a new set from Hot Rocks. Now, they don't accept returns, and I've not tried them. I've tested them in the Maxi Matcher, but I've not actually tried them. So, my recommendation would actually be, if you want a small bottle amplifier valve, go for Tung Sols. Now, here's what the Tung Sols look like, if I can get it out of the box. It's still a small bottle. So these are Russian made by the company which is now owned by Mike Matthews of Electro-Harmonics. So I'm going to test these valves. You can see Watford always write their bias test figures on the top of the valve, and that's 18 milliamps idle current. So I'm just going to populate these into the valve tester, and I've got the savers on here, as you can see. So I'll just populate them all, turn it on, and see if Watford valves have got the correct figures. Well, because I suspect they're actually using a Maxi Matcher. So let's see, shall we? Now, bias. Perhaps guitarists, being guitarists and not electrical engineers, don't really know what bias is. They've heard rumours in internet forums about, you know, hot and cold, and hot being so much superior, warmth and easily overdriven and so forth. Well, for power valves, easily overdriven is not something you're going to experience in normal use unless you've got a warehouse to practice in, because the sound volume levels would just be so extreme to get these things to actually go into compression and produce those lovely, lovely harmonics that we so crave, that it would be impossible. Absolutely impossible. So it's a bit of a moot point. All you really want is these things to work and not be so cold that you get crossover distortion. So that means that the valve is actually turning itself off between the push and pull stages. So here we are. Maxi Matcher 2 is incredibly simple to use. All you've got is a plate voltage. I've set it to 400 as per the instructions. It's 606, let me find it. 400 plate voltage and minus 48 bias, and that's all you've got to do. So I've set that to minus 48, plate voltage 400. There's the test socket that we're testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to make a note of these in my notebook as I go, and this one does the idle current versus transconductance. Now transconductance is a measure of effectively how powerful the valve is, how strong it is, how new it is. An old one will test low. Now the spec, according to Maxi Matcher 2 for 6L6, is greater than 2.2 and a current of 12 to 40 milliamps. Let's switch this thing on. Okay, so while we await the valves heating up, I'll put it onto plate current in milliamps, and you'll see the thing starting to conduct. So the heater has come on, valve is starting to conduct, and that is for a given minus 48 volts relative to ground, the amount of current in milliamps that the valve is taking. Now if that voltage were to go positive, nearer to ground, the idle current will go up. And if it's removed entirely, the stream of electrons coming from the cathode and hitting the anode will destroy the anode. And the anode is the outer metal bit that you can see from the outside of the valve, because it's all concentric. And the effect of that will be red plating, and you'll see the actual metal of the anode glow with the stream of electrons hitting it with large amounts of power and energy. So the idea of the grid is to retard that flow of electrons and allow for a transition of the actual amplified signal to the plate voltage. Okay, now this is also a little test of Derek and Watford valves. I didn't intend it to be a test, but these are rated at 18 milliamps with a 2.8 transconductance. So because I suspect that Derek Watford valves uses a Maxi Matcher, Hot Rocks definitely don't, because their bias figures are completely different to the ones I get, both in my Evo Mark 1 or 2 and this Maxi Matcher 2. So here we are. So we're in position 1, and they're still kind of warming up, but the plate current is 17.3 or 4. If I go from position to position, that shows you the difference in idle current. Now it's important for match sets to have an equivalent current per pair in a 4-valve push-pull system, because the outer 2 pairs are acting together. So if you were to measure the current on, say, the inner 2 pairs, that reflects the opposite halves of push and pull. And if these are equal in terms of current draw, it means that you get common mode cancellation in the output transformer, therefore reduced noise, and also no equivalent DC current running through the transformer. So that's the advantage of having match sets. Maybe you've experienced putting in mismatch sets and hear a hum. That's because there's actually something happening within the core of the transformer at all times because of the mismatch of the current. You should only operate in push and pull. Okay, so let's go from position 1 again. 17.2. 16.5. 18.8. 19.3. So Derek quotes 18 on all 4. So I get something slightly different. Now that could be the Maxi Matcher 2. He may not actually use a Maxi Matcher. You might have a much more sophisticated way of doing it, but I would consider that a match set of valves. I think the maximum deviation is from position 2 to position 4. That's only 3 milliamps. You're never going to notice that. Now let's have a look at the transconductance. So let's go back to position 1. Transconductance. 2.2, according to Maxi Matcher, would be the minimum. So in position 1, this one, 2.42, position 2, 2.33, 2.54 for position 3, and 2.54. So they're good strong valves. So you might choose to put them into the amplifier in a certain order. So for any match set, you've got a choice. You can pair them up in 2 and outer 2. So for this one, for example, I would take a note of all of the idle currents. That's 17.5, 16, that's quite low. 19, 19.4. So I would say that position 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 might be quite a good match. But really, you're never going to be able to tell the difference. So that's a good set of match valves, I think. So I'm going to take a wee break for the valves to cool down, and I'll put the other set in and see how they do. Hello, and back again, and now we have the second set of valves in. So these are the ones that were rated by Watford Valves at 24 milliamps idle current and a transconductance of 3. So let's turn on. So you can see how easy this Maxi Matcher is. If you have valves in your amp and you don't want to take the chassis out and fiddle with the bias, either by a potentiometer or changing resistors like in a Mesa Boogie, this is great because you just take out the old valves, put them in the Maxi Matcher, get an idea of idle current, and if you have a number of sets of valves, you can find the set of valves closest to the ones that you took out. Now, you know, given that it's £800 or so, that's a lot of money, but I quite like doing this stuff. I work as an electrical engineer anyway, so I'm kind of interested in all the technical stuff. And there isn't much of a difference between a valve and a FET, field effect transistor. They have grids, drains and sources, whereas valves have anodes, cathodes and grids. and they operate on a sort of a very similar basis of the application of a gate to control the flow of the electrons or the charge that will be made bigger by the alternating current on the grid. And it's interesting to do. Valves are nice things, kind of dangerous in a valve amp. You've got to watch yourself, but you know, they're old school, and I like that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is the set that was rated at 2024, and let's have a look at position 1. Now, given that the vagaries of wall voltage, I'm currently operating at 237 volts on the mains. I believe the Maxi Matcher 2 has got improved regulation from the Maxi Matcher 1. And given that I've got these savers on, which may drop voltage, they shouldn't, but I'm not going directly into the socket because I don't want to wear the thing out. So I've got these 4 savers in, and based on the error between different measurement instruments and the wall voltage and so forth, I expect difference. What I'm expecting is generally a set that I order to be of a certain bias to be around that region, and the first lot were. Let's have a look at this set. They've been warmed up for long enough. So I've got 21.7 milliamps of current on the first one, $23.4 on the second, 24.6 on the third, and 23.7 on the fourth. So that's the highest. That's similar to position 4. And that's the lowest. It's still 22 or 21.8. So pretty much exactly what I ordered. Significantly higher by the order of magnitude that I would have expected from that first set. This is the set that was labeled Mesa Select. So they do valves specifically for Mesa Boogies. And this would be the red series. Slightly hotter than the ones I took out from the Mesa, but that's probably all to the good. So the ones I took out of the Mesa ranged from 14 on 2 of them to 18 on the other 2. So, and a lower transconductance, so 2 of them had suspiciously become weaker, if that's what happened, and they weren't supplied like that by Mesa Boogie, because they've been in the Boogie. It's a Mesa Boogie King Snake amplifier since I bought it in 2015. So I think it's time to replace the valves. So I think the Tung Sols are good because I put the King Snake in a head shell made by Zilla cabs. It's no longer in the combo, although I've kept all the combo cabinet and everything together. I've put this amplifier chassis in a brand new wooden head shell with the reverb in it. So I need the short bottles to clear the reverb tank and not to cause too much electromagnetic interference with the reverb, even although it's a metal case. So I think this set will do very nicely. So let's just take a measure of the plate. So the plate current, 21.4, 23, 24, 23.4. That's well within the error of this machine and potentially the error in the Watford Valves one. But this is a match set, as was the other one. Perfect. Let's have a look at the transconductance. So we're looking for 2.2 or above. Now this one is rated at 3 on the box. So a very strong set of quad valves here. 2.66, 2.66, 2.8, 2.75. So that's quite a strong set of valves. So I'm happy putting this in, but I'll put them in this specific order. So of the 4 valves in the Mesa Boogie running from V6 to V9, I will choose the highest idle current, which is 24.2, and I'm going to choose the lowest one to pair it with. That one. And I'll choose position 2 and position 4 for the outer 2. So those 2 will be paired together, and those outer 2. So they form the push-pull. So happy with that. Heartily recommend Watford valves. I asked for a specific set, was given advice by Derek and Derek Rocco, I believe. Very helpful chap. So there was a bit of email going back and forward, him advising me what I should put in the Mesa Boogie, and his advice was to just heat it up a little bit, because the Mesa Boogie Reds are very cold, quite sterile sounding. So he suggested using an idle bias of 24, which still was within the scope of the Red range. So another set of matched valves. I've not had any problems with my Two Rock with these Tung Sols in. In fact, the amplifier is on now and is in the corner of the room there, and I haven't heard a peep out of it. Not at startup, not at all. These Redbase, well, I don't know. Tung Sol. I've got a new set of Tung Sols that I've not put into an amplifier. These I bought a couple of years ago and kept as spares for the Two Rock Classic Reverb, which had these in from the get-go. These are the original ones, by the way. Not particularly impressed, because they failed with a crackling, rustling, kind of groaning sound as soon as they took it off standby. So I replaced the valves with another set of brand new valves from Tube Amp Doctor, and it did exactly the same thing. So I was convinced it was the amplifier, and took ages replacing the preamp valves one by one with known good ones, taking the chassis out of the head shell and inspecting it with an inspection mirror, hoping to see a burned up resistor or something, but absolutely nothing. The build quality of the Two Rock is exemplary. You wonder why you pay so much money for it until you open it up and have a look. It's like, right, okay. So nothing wrong with the amplifier, it was the valves. People say it's generally the valves. It generally is, with exceptions. But I'm not sure I'll be buying Tube Amp Doctor again. It's a Chinese valve. The Tung Sols are Russian, and I think these are much more solid. And you know, unless you're running your valve amp at full volume, they sound identical. I can't tell any difference between any valve, any power valve I've ever heard, and I don't care what it is. EL84s, 6L6s, EL34s, with a clean amp, you know, at moderate volume, you hear no difference whatsoever. Way more important is the speaker. You know, in order of magnitude of potential change of sound, it's the speaker first. And then you might argue it's where the tone shaping circuit is and the gain structure of the amplifier. And the valves are way down the list there. Anyway, so this is the Maxi Matcher 2. I've got another video coming up with a new guitar, so please forgive me if this is a bit boring, but just a demonstration of the Maxi Matcher 2. So have fun and enjoy the next one, which is an actual guitar with some playing, which may or may not be a good thing. Okay, bye-bye for now.